Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named JØRGÍ, if I'm not mistaken, titled By the Sand. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on YouTube with the video on the screen, and we're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do this. What do we have? A panda.
I can't with this anymore. That's it, we're done. It's over.
Hey.
Incredibly intense, isn't it, with the cinematic just a really raunchy guitar tone. It's beautiful with the synths, the keys. And a slick drum fill to kind of pass us over. I like that lyric, you know, rain on me, I'll drown in you, if I'm not mistaken. Great transition to the lead here.
Rain on me, I'll drown in you. What are you doing here?
I didn't know if you wanted to see me, but here I am.
I didn't know if I wanted to see you until I saw you.
I don't know how to. I don't know how to feel about that one. I'm not sure where we were going with that song, at least story-wise. I enjoyed the music, but we're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. And so welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named JØRGÍ titled By the Sand. Now, this is a little bit of a tricky one. I watched the video and got the whole audio-visual experience. What do we think this track is about? I'm trying to sort of figure out the narrative between, you know, clearly they end up splitting up, and the woman just does not seem to want to see the boyfriend again, so they become exes, and she goes on this adventure with the panda. And maybe by the end of it, she's kind of appreciating the original guy a bit more because of her interactions with the panda or something like that. And maybe that was like a deliberate thing that the panda was doing, maybe to sort of get her to a point where she wanted to sort of get back with the ex or something like that. Like, 'cause he turned up with the guitar at the end, and she's like, you know, I didn't know I wanted to see you until I saw you. You know what I mean? It's interesting. The lyrics kind of confer an understanding that we're just getting lost in this person's emotions there. You know, like, we're struggling through the situation, but we'll struggle through it together, you know, by the sand, by the ocean. They're like the young romance and getting through those sort of relationships and trying to figure our way through the world and how complicated they are. And then they talk about how they're going to make it through. So you get the feeling that there's a sense of optimism about the fact that they'll get through these difficulties that they're having, but at the same time it's based off of a minor key over the instrumental section, which would infer that we were not feeling particularly positive about it at all. I'm sure there's a lot of imagery in the video that kind of alludes to more stuff within the track itself and within the story, but ultimately that's my kind of guess of it as like a face value on a first impression. So usually in these conclusion sections, I typically talk about a few things that I thought were done well with the track specifically, and then maybe any sort of like applicable constructive feedback or critique. And I think the first thing I'll point out that was done well here was, I think the vocal layering was done well there. We had some interesting attempts with our verse and chorus passages there. I thought we were a little bit quiet in the mix at the start of that first verse there, but we built ourselves up with a bit more kind of oomph in our chest voice there. And as we had those vocal harmonies, those really exquisite sort of tones in the first half of every time with the chorus section, and how they resonated with the rest of the elements within the mix, it started to click and make sense for me. And I didn't necessarily get all the words through clearly, but at the same time, the ones I did mattered and they made sense. And you need those hooks to belt. And they did. So I think we communicated well. I think the tone kind of reminds me a little bit of music from like The Cure and stuff like that. And that is a compliment. I love the combination of the bass, drums, guitar, and sort of key patterns that we had with the starry synths. So I thought it was really beautiful. But there's this sort of like mystical kind of like very kind of angsty kind of tonality overall with the track that I think matches the expression of the vocalist as well. Ultimately, it sounded like they were going through it and now trying to reach out to this person, and it seemed very organic and authentic. I think it was also the intricacy and technicality of some parts of the instrumental performance there. Like, we had some more sort of like palatable, understandable synth and key arpeggios in the chorus sections, and they were beautiful with the way they sounded, as well as the triads that they put forward in note form. Melodically, the bass guitar as well was nice and supportive in the low end. And it didn't just play the root notes, there was movements around the different chords, and with the guitar moved and the bass would go after it, and sometimes they'd be in unison together, and so there was a chemistry between the guitarist and the bass there, which I appreciate. There was variations between the strum chords and the arpeggiated guitar parts there, working with the power chord or more heavier elements there, with the guitar solo as well, a fantastic alternate lead instrument in the mix there with the solo part. And I really dig both how sort of succinct the guitar solo was, with the way it kind of started as a solo, and then it's almost like we harmonized because at that point the woman maybe decided that they wanted to get back together with the man, if I'm not mistaken, and she was kind of thinking about getting back with the guy at that point there, which is like really sweet. So it's almost like the guitars are trying to communicate something about what the woman is going through, and there's that connection there. So there's development not just lyrically but also from the instruments, and it was a really kind of like pretty sort of like lead harmony that they had there with those major and minor sort of intervals there. And there was also the tone of the distortion there, kind of reminded me of a lot of kind of like metal from like the 80s or rock from the 80s there, how it was more about the coloration and the shimmer and sheen of it rather than trying to get edge to it. It was a very fuzzy kind of boisterous guitar tone in the rhythm section though from the start, but I do kind of like how kind of like gritty it was. It did accurately demonstrate the kind of difficulties that they seem to be going through lyrically. And as a final note on the instrumental performance overall, I just want to give a shout out to the drummer there. Some of those beats and fills and 16th note grooves and syncopated and on-beat passages were tremendous. I love the approach to the groove and chops over the song in general. We knew when to sort of like pause and allow other elements to sit there, but when we needed to push forward, we were comfortable on all our main four rhythms there. And we knew when to sort of simplify and have more sort of straightforward eighth note parts on like the rides or the hi-hats or like the crashes and stuff like that. But then we also knew to kind of speed things up and just kind of add little ghost notes and a little bit of kind of sass and finesse to kind of brighten it up and make it a bit more exciting. The drums seemed like they were a little bit quiet in the mix, but I suppose it's more of a production thing than anything else. Ultimately, it was a very tight performance and there was chemistry between the elements, and I appreciate that. I do also want to talk about the studio production, actually, is my third thing, and this is also where I might give a little bit of kind of like constructive feedback. I think that it was leveled quite well. I can tell that we were being deliberate with the placement of instruments within this frequency spectrum in the stereo field. It seemed like there were some resonant frequencies on certain instruments that were kind of making them poke out a little bit more. Like the pads seemed like they're a little bit resonant or the keys there. And they might have had like a lower mid thing that was kind of like making the drums a little bit quieter, but I still could hear everything like neatly. It's just you could have potentially had a bit more oomph to the sound of the drums there, but then it's a fine balance, you know. I think it's also in transparency. I think that the initial vocals when they're a bit quieter at the first half of the verse, I appreciate what we were trying to do there. We could have potentially have filtered them to kind of make them a bit more kind of like a phone call, or like kind of got rid of anything below 200 hertz to kind of make them a bit more sort of like wistful. And then you could have had the full body or like a double tracking or something like that coming with the verse part there, because we clearly knew how to. Our production chops are tight there. The way it was produced is really good. You know, like I like how things again were fleshed out in the stereo field. The music surrounds you in the headphones, it had dynamic range, and there was a lot of really positive stuff about it. It's just these little bits that I'm pointing out just for transparency's sake. But honestly, like really well done. Nice and loud without pumping. And I like how we didn't sanitize the tones to a point where they sounded generic. Like everything in there either harkened back to a style of music that I think we wanted to approach with the song, you know, that kind of post-rock kind of gritty kind of like synth rock based kind of element there, but it's also that we had some kind of raucous tones which are a bit less conventional, so you still again sort of the nuance of the piece. So ultimately I think it was the vocal performance and the layering of that overall, it was the way the instruments were performed and like put around the piece, and it was also the studio production. I think we've done well with these three, as well as some applicable kind of like feedback on that. Ultimately though, really fantastic song. I had a good time listening through it. And thank you for watching my review of this track from an act named JØRGÍ titled By the Sand, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social media and their YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.